My name's Dave Hill. Welcome to the video lessons. We're going to be studying rhythm guitar in this course, and this is going to be the full course of rhythm guitar part 1. So this is going to be a real exciting course for me to teach. I've taught, of course, the single string units and the single string contents, but this is going to be exclusively on rhythm guitar now. So we've got a lot to learn and a lot to dig in this course. So we're going to study a lot of things about different types of voicings, different styles, and different types of techniques associated with rhythm guitar. But let's get down and get serious about it and pull out our rhythm guitar thinking caps and let's have some fun. All right, talk to you in a sec. Well, hello. Thank you for tuning in to Lesson 1, Rhythm Guitar. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, and we're going to start with the basics at first, and we're going to make sure that everybody understands really what's important about the fundamentals of rhythm guitar, but we're going to advance it and make it interesting all the way. So let's get our thinking caps out. Here we go. So rhythm guitar, what does that mean? Rhythm guitar, the study of rhythm, is really a study of harmony, as specifically applied to our guitar in this case. So what that means is we've got to learn as guitar players all the different possibilities of guitar chords and guitar voicings and the terminology associated with harmony and chord charts and all of that information, so that when we're faced with any kind of rhythm guitar situation, we know what the proper types of chords and structures of chords are available to make the music happen. So you start off by learning the most fundamental types of chords in the guitar, and then we build from there. So I want to get some information straight before we even go any further than the first chord, and that's the information related to the diagrams that I'm going to be showing a lot as this course develops. Okay, so it's really important for me to show you this information so that we're all clear about what these diagrams mean. So let's go back and look at my board right here. And don't pay attention to any of this stuff right here. Just I want you to focus right on this first diagram right here, because this is the way we're going to be orientating our chords. Okay, so let's just get a few things straight. Some of you guys and girls might know this at home, but I'm just going to make sure that everybody understands it. First of all, the names of the notes referring to the strings, the open strings, the high E, the highest string or the thinnest string is number 1. That's called the first string. The lowest E is called the 6th string. Okay, so you have E's on either edge of the guitar neck here. Okay, and then as we go up from the 6th string, the low E, we go to the A string here. We go to the open D string here. The 4th string. We go to the 3rd string, the open G string. The 2nd string is the open B string. And then once again, the high E is the 1st string. Okay, we really need to know these names of the open strings, because as we start to learn chords that move up and down the neck, we need to know those open strings so we can also find the roots along the other strings. Okay, so we're going to just concern ourselves with the open strings for a while, and we'll get a lot of mileage out of that. But let's just review that again. We've got E, open A, open D, open G, open B, and again open E. Okay, and this is respectively the 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings on the guitar. Okay, now you'll also see the perpendicular lines to the strings, and these lines right here represent the frets. So this first line here represents my 1st fret. So when I'm talking about putting a note, for example, right here on this particular position of the B string, that would essentially be right there. If I were to mark it in, that would be like the 1st fret of the B string. This would be the 2nd fret. Okay, so I'll refer to things in frets, and I might write numbers a lot of times next to the frets to describe the position we're talking about. Okay, so let's get back to what I'm talking about now with chords. Now, why is it important for a guitar player to know chords? Well, think about it. How many other instruments in the band actually play chords? Does a saxophone play chords? No. Does a drummer play chords? No. How about a bass player? Does a bass player play chords? Not usually. Okay. What kind of instruments play chords? Well, harmonic instruments that have the capability of playing more than one note at the same time. So that pretty much leaves us to the string instrument family and the keyboard family. So essentially, keyboard instruments, piano, electric piano, harpsichord, things like that are all keyboard instruments, and they're primarily concerned with harmony and chords. And guitars, or let's say other kinds of stringed instruments, mandolins, banjos, things of that nature. I guess you could even say a harpsichord, or rather auto harp, but you don't see too many of those anymore. And to some extent, violins and cellos and things like that can play chords, although those are primarily concerned with melody. So that leaves the guitarists and the keyboard players or piano players to deal with harmony. So that's why you have to learn chords, because you're going to be responsible to play chords for all the rest of the situations you're going to be involved in when someone wants to write a song, or someone wants accompaniment, or someone wants you to play in a guitar in a band. You have to learn how to play chords. Okay? Playing soloing and lead guitar is all very exciting stuff, and it's very important, but there's a lot of work out there as a guitar player playing chords, and that's what we're going to focus on in this course. So the basic shapes that you want to learn that are related to everything else we're going to learn from here on are the open string cowboy chords, or caged chords, and I'll explain why they're called caged in a minute. But let's talk about those first. Okay? So one of the first chords that you might actually even know this chord already that you would learn is the C shape, or the C chord. Okay? And that's the first chord that I've written here on my diagram. And now you might know this at home, maybe you don't, but it's a C major chord. Okay? You might even be wondering why in particular it's called a C major chord. Well, if you think about this root right here, A, and you know a little bit about harmony and theory, you're going to know that there's half steps in the scale system that we use, in the musical systems, between B and C and E and F. Every other natural note is a whole step. So if you went from A, the open string, the next whole step note would be B right there. And then the next note would be C, because there's a half step between B and C. So that's going to make C right there. Okay? So there's the root of the chord. The root is the tonic. It's the fundamental tone that represents the lowest tone and the sound of the chord, and the structure from the notes that are harmonized above it. So that's why it's called a C chord, because that's the root right there. And the remaining notes are the upper thirds and fifths of the chord. Okay? Now in this case, this chord actually has two roots, because that is also a C as well. Okay, so I could have circled that. Okay, now what are these little circles on the strings here, on the E string and the G string? That simply means that those notes are available as open strings as part of the chord sound. So you would want to let those notes ring as well, right? You could, if you wanted to, you could actually play just the notes that I have darkened in, but you'd only get this kind of sound. You get a very simple 1, 3, and 1, and it doesn't sound nearly as good as the whole strummed chord, essentially from the 5th string up. Okay? So that's the first chord we want you to learn, and that's a C major chord. Okay? Now, let's go to my next chord over here, and you're going to see another shape. Okay? And once again, you'll see the circles here that represents the open strings that you want to let ring, as well as the fingered notes. Okay? Now, in this case, the lowest note is the actual open A string, and that happens to be the root of this chord. So I could circle it to show you that that's the actual root of my particular chord, and that's why it's called an A major chord. In fact, you can play all the way up to the open E. Okay, so this is the root of the chord, and then the rest of the remaining notes are also part of the A chord. Okay, so you can see with my left hand, I've chosen a few different ways to finger it, because it only takes one finger to play this chord. But sometimes I play it with 3 fingers, just because it gives me other options, or it's just other habits. You rarely see anyone finger it like that, though. I'll be honest. Most people play it like this or like this. Okay? So that's the second chord. We'll call this the first chord, the C chord. This is the second chord. Okay? So that's an A chord, very simple chord, but sounds great. Next, the next important open string chord is the G chord. Let's take a look at that now. In this case, why is it a G chord? Well, going back to our open string, we know that's an E note, and we also know from a little bit of theory knowledge that the half steps occur between the E and the F and the B and C. So if this is E, so the next note is F right there. And then the next natural note would be G, so that's why that's circled. That is the root of the chord. So if we finger the diagram just as it's written here, you're going to see this. And notice that there's a lot of open strings in this chord, because the D, the open G, and the open B are all part of the G chord. So you could also circle that as another root, because that's also a G as well as the open G string. So there's actually 3 roots in this chord. So that's fine. Not every chord structure is going to have the same combinations of roots, thirds, and fifths. But if it's literally just 3 notes like that, that's still a G chord just as much as this is a G chord. Because the components that make up a G sound are a root, a third, and a fifth, or a major chord, root, third, and fifth. And this right here is a root, third, and fifth chord of G. This is just a stronger, bigger sounding G chord, taking advantage of the full 6 strings of the guitar. You might even see some variations on this chord I like to use. Another option is to put your finger on this note as well, and not use the open B, but fret the D right here, and then you get this kind of a sound. Listen to the difference. It's subtle, but you can hear a difference. Here's an open B in the chord, and now here's the fretted D. Right? I'll do it slowly so you can hear the difference. Versus okay, so they're both acceptable. It's just a different way of playing the G sound. Okay? Let's move on. So that was our 3rd chord. That's the G form, G chord. And we move over to the big open E chord, our favorite open E chord. Now, I think you could probably figure out why it's called an E chord, because the lowest note here is the root, and it's the open string. So it's pretty obvious that's going to be the root. The outside E's, or the top string, is also available. The B is ringing, and then we've got the remaining notes that make up the fifth, the root, and